going to hear a lot more about AI avatars in the future, and AI video generators. It offers businesses the ability to create AI-generated videos quickly using simple text and provides real-time artificial intelligence and video synthesis solutions. So we're going to take a quick look at their AI avatars and applications and how Howie Mandel actually is using their technology.
Hey everybody, it's AI Howie, coming to you with the help of my new friends at Deep Brain. Thanks to the power of artificial intelligence, you will soon be seeing me everywhere.
Yeah. So here is an example. Basically, they have a platform that allows you to actually pick and choose an avatar. They basically scan folks that sign up and say, yes, I'm happy to use my likeness and whatnot. And we're seeing that a lot of this actually in Asia, where they're having, there's AI avatars for news anchors as well as like banks and stuff like that. And then the last one is, which I find really interesting, and I'll let you marinate on this before Jay comes up and we have a further discussion, but is this one with
AI 써니. 안녕하세요 여러분. 오늘부터 한국에서 여러분의 건강생활을 책임질 AI 써니입니다. 옆에 있는 손흥민 형이 설명해준 대로 여러분이 좋아하는 걸 오랫동안 좋아할 수 있도록 여러 가지 유용하고 재미있는 것들을 많이 소개하고 함께 만들어갈 계획입니다.
So that's Deep Brain AI. Definitely go check them out. Very interesting. Could be super helpful for maybe something that you're doing. All right. Thank you. Jay Tucker's going to come up and we're going to continue the conversation. And if you guys want to...
I don't think we have 10 minutes. We have about 5 minutes, right? But we have time for a couple of questions. So I'm going to start by asking you one.
Sure.
So you seem to be pointing out that AI is breaking the law. What I mean is, for those of us, how many of you have ever worked in tech? Hands up high if you've ever worked in tech. So you all know that the rule is good, fast, and cheap. You get to pick 2 out of 3, right? Is that not the rule? You're telling me we get all 3.
I'm not telling, I'm just showing. I'm not saying anything. I'm letting you all figure it.
Okay.
Think about it.
Okay. So of all of the examples you showed,
yeah.
Which one for you do you think has the most potential? Which one do you think potentially can make the most?
Everyone was a little bit different. So what I like about Shelby's example is you have the opportunity to come up with your, like it really puts the creative tools in the hands of people who, I have an idea, this is what I want. I've always had to wait for some graphic artists to like create that, but now I know I can actually use some tools to help me like figure out what that creative process is. So its concept is visualization. And to me, I think that's really cool, because for me, who's like, I can't draw worth beans, I'm drawing stick figures, or I'm pulling up images, I can actually sort of figure out this is sort of what I want and what I'm thinking about. And it's sort of like it helps to like bring everyone together in that thing, in that piece. I think the Sora thing is interesting. We'll see how things play out a little bit more. Obviously we saw also the article that Tyler Perry put out.
That's what I was about to ask you about that.
Well, there's a lot of different people who might have different thoughts.
Hold on. So does everybody know about the article issue? Okay, so Tyler Perry, hands up if you haven't heard of Tyler Perry. Okay, good. So Tyler Perry, who's been relatively successful, has created a production facility in the Atlanta area, right? He's been building, Well, he was planning to expand his facility. He was going to build more sound stages and other stuff on his back lot, which was a massive capital investment, right?
$800 million.
$800 million. Thank you, Mr. Bloom. And so he saw a demo of Sora and halted his plans. Right? Now, I don't know if you think that this is the kind of stuff that would matter on the same time horizon as his investment. But obviously, Tyler Perry felt like, I need to rethink the business that we're in and what investments are going to yield, given the fact that technology can already do this.
Yeah, the key question is, how are we going to make content?
Right. And how are we?
I don't know. It's not, like, hopefully there's a lot of creatives in here. They'll be the determinants, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, to me, again, I did this in the welcome. One of the things that I think is really important to remember is that we are still the ones who have the tools in our hands, right? This stuff is meant to kind of augment, amplify what we do. So this idea that like there's some kind of, we haven't yet reached the point where Skynet has become self-aware, right?
Yeah.
So it's still, there's still potential for us to harness these tools for ourselves, and you gave some great practical examples of how we can kind of streamline and do more and do better, right? Is there any point of friction or concern that you see in the short run? When I say short run, 2 to 5 years.
I think the next 2 to 5 years are going to be the most disruptive for entertainment, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would you tell if you're going to advise these folks out here after what you've just presented? Now, mind you, you started in your intro talking about something that's equally provocative, which is the shift in the way people consume entertainment.
Yeah, there's both parts.
Right. So
It's a disruptive.
don't worry, it's all going to be fine. It's all going to be fine.
I just paint the picture.
Okay. So given the picture that you painted,
Yeah.
if there was one thing you wanted people to leave this room remembering,
Yeah.
what would that be?
I mean, I think that, it's interesting. It goes back to a conversation with my husband. He went to USC Film School, sorry. Again, too much USC.
It's okay, there's nothing.
I didn't go to USC Film School, which is probably, better for me. But, in that conversation, it's sort of like this framework. It's like a mindset. It's like, the whole time in my career, I've done it this way. Okay? Kind of have to break out of ourselves, right? I think the blinders are, you only put the blinders on yourself. I think curiosity, resilience, ingenuity, these are all like pillars of like American like businesses, right? And I think that we have to kind of, you come to the determination yourself, depending on your decision, right? When am I gonna just like, no. I mean, even like, Annie and I had a conversation this morning, and we're looking at stuff and I'm like, like we know a lot, we're like, and, but you get to a process, and I think what it is that it still requires, with AI, I forgot to mention, I showed you the examples because I wanted you to see what these are the things that everyone's talking about this year. But AI is zeros and ones, right? It's not human, doesn't have a soul, doesn't have taste. It's outputting what we put in. Now, it is scraping a lot of data, but there's a human component there. And I would absolutely say that for everyone, it's like, remember that. Because we have a conscience, we have a responsibility, we believe in things that are important, the values in which we live by, all those things. I'm talking about all human stuff, and the collaborative nature of those things. Those are the things that are super important as the baseline, and then, okay, knowing that, how do I sort of look at tools in a way that can help me extend the humanity? Right? Because AI is really it's a humanity conversation, and it was funny because my 13-year-old, the 13-year-old, the Fortniter, he said, Mom, think about AI. It's like, everyone's like so anti-AI or whatever. He's like, it's a human thing. I was like, who are you? You're like, you're saying, you're preaching like really deep things, and I think that's the thing, is that you get to a certain place, you sort of need to think about it. I think we have to still, as individuals, especially in the business, we need to be aware. We need to be aware.
Yeah. So this is the thing. We have QE3, Quincy Jones III, here in the audience today. Thank you for coming. And one of the things that he and I had a conversation about is this question about, when we talk about entertainment, what we're really talking about is culture.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the commodity that's being exchanged is culture. It's joy, right? It's feeling and connection. That's what it is. And so if you think about the people who invest so heavily with their time and their creativity and their work to bring that to you, to connect you to the way they see the world, to share their art with you, share their culture with you, right? The last thing you want to have happen is that you are enriched personally and they are fleeced professionally, right? You don't want to see your favorite athlete or your favorite entertainer go broke. You don't want to see their work being used without them being compensated, right? At the same time, when we talk about how we train up a lot of these AI algorithms, we leverage past work. And one of the things you'll hear on stage is people talking about opt-in or stuff that's already in the public domain, et cetera, because there is this concern that, using stuff that is still copyright protected without people's consent results in what is essentially theft. And it's only one of the dimensions of kind of how we think about, from a societal perspective, how we make sure that the people who generate that creativity also benefit from what they generate, right? And so when I ask you about this kind of like, well, what is the next, 2 to 5 years or whatever, part of me is also asking, well, what does it mean for the folks who are creators, right? Should they be, what are the things that they should be excited about and what should they be keeping their eyes on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the first slide, it's storytelling. We, as humans, we do storytelling really well, right? It's the storytelling. And that storytelling piece is exactly what you said. It's the connecting, like how am I connecting to human to human? So for any creators, it's like, if you don't have that base of that story, the storytelling, it doesn't matter. Like, it's just a tool, right? Like, I have an iPhone, should I go shoot an iPhone movie, What is that? And we see that, I guess you could say, on different various platforms, which are engaging and people are trending and watching, but it's, again, I think we have to, and why I talk about the umbrella and why I talk about showing all these things is we have to look at it in a new way. It's like the Big Hero 6, like the big brother turns them upside down, it's like, look at it in a new way. And I think that was the other thing. I think we all have to sort of look at things in a new way.
All right, we're at time, so that's a perfect way to end it with one of my favorite movies, Big Hero 6. See it if you haven't. And we're going to keep the show going, but thank you so much for coming here to make us worth this time.
Thank you again.
Today's next Innovator Spotlight is Nexus Management Group's CC Kurzman, who will be hosted by UCLA Anderson professor Dr. Molly Kinberg. Please welcome CC Kurzman with Dr. Kinberg.
Welcome. I am so excited to welcome my friend CC Kurzman today, who has 20 years of incredible experience in music, who after years of working as in management and as an executive in music has pivoted to a lot of board work. I think you are on 9 different boards right now, spanning industries from beauty, music, entertainment. So I'm so glad for you to bring your vast perspective for a conversation about the music industry today. Thank you, Cece.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Anderson, for having me. This is really fun.
Amazing. So to get us started, it would be fantastic to hear a little bit about how you got your launch in the music business.
It wasn't really a launch as a sort of crawl, grovel and crawl into the music business. I guess it's safe to say that, in my mind, coming out of college, if I didn't go into the music business, I'd be homeless because I was that determined that this is my calling. And I have zero musical talent. I'm tone deaf, but I'm probably the biggest music nerd and music fan ever. And I thought, if there's, any way that I can make my passion my profession, I'm gonna do everything I can to do it.
Perfect, thank you. You've spoken so thoughtfully about creating second acts for talent. And even when they're at the heights of their career, you've thought about how to create value for them downstream. And you did this when you were managing Shakira, and you've done this for so many different talents. Could you tell us a little bit about this idea of second acts?
Yeah, well, so, we all know that a career as an entertainer is not necessarily at its peak for life. There's the Rolling Stones, but there are not a lot of others who are still doing it at that stage in their life. So, really trying to think about the artists at the peak of their influence, the time when they least want to think about the downswing, right? You have to, it's like talking to a college student about a 401k. Nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to know about it. It is not like, it'll take you out of your ninja zone if you even contemplate that there's the backstory to this. So, talking to artists, I would sort of frame it this way, right? This is buy your mama a house money. This is plane and boat money. And if you want to be here in your end game, you have to start thinking beyond what I call the transactional behavior, right? It's you make money from singing, from dancing, from performing, from showing up. And none of that lasts a lifetime, and certainly not at its peak. So how do we take your influence while it's at its peak and leverage that into things that are going to be the gift that keeps on giving? The term making money while you sleep, creating that nest egg, creating generational wealth, being able to, sort of see into the future of what your needs are going to be. So that's really where the second act came from. Nobody wants to hear it. No artist wants to hear it. But at the time, if you can kind of sneak in a few ideas that give them those long-term annuities that are going to pay off down the road, they're thankful when you get there.
Like all industries, but the music industry has been in such a series of cycles, whether it's transitions to DVD, to CDs, or Napster's arrival in 1999. Can you comment a bit on that cycle and whether we're experiencing another point of inflection today?
I like that term, inflection, as opposed to upswing or downswing. Historically, the music business is run in roughly 10-year cycles, and inevitably when that disruption hits, it's seen as a sort of a valley. But the disruption has always been followed by an upswing that has been really, really strong point of innovation for the industry that leaves it stronger than it found it. So it's sort of cycles, but the cycles are sort of up and to the right. And you talk about Napster, which was a major inflection point. And if you think about it, at the time, there's sort of two tribes that we have in all industries when there's disruption. There's the tribe of what we call nostalgics. And at the time of Napster, I was at Sony, and we were very nostalgic. My boss at the time said something to the effect of, "This internet thing's a fad, it will never last." It's a self-preservation that is natural, this idea that if we put our heads down and just keep doing what we're doing, it'll be a trend and it will pass. At the time, and this is all dating me by the way, but at the time, the two most important jobs in a record company were the head of distribution and the head of radio promotion. So the person who put the records in the store and the person who promoted songs to radio. Neither of those jobs exist today. And so that'll tell you a lot about, how this industry moves. And I think when you talk about the tribes, people still hire for the tribes of nostalgics because it's what we know. It's how we prevent our own obsolescence, how we sort of grab hold of what it is that we know, and we tend to see that reflection when we're building companies. And then you have the others who tend to be the winners, who say to themselves, you know what? We're going to keep doing what we're doing, but we're also going to build an escape hatch over here. And we recognize that escape hatch and that parallel sort of shadow business could accelerate the decline of the business as we know it, but we know it's going there anyway, and we're going to prepare for that. And I actually think you're seeing a lot of that in the industry today. You're seeing an industry, whether it's Spotify or the record labels, there's a lot of cutting. There's a lot of what's called, what we see as being consolidation, but it's actually happening at a point when the business is actually on the rise. Why is it happening? Is it they're not cost cutting to be able to sort of, protect an industry in decline. They're actually cost cutting because they're seeing that we need to reinvest in different skills. We need to reinvest in sort of where the puck is going. And for that, we need to sort of streamline our current business, get rid of some of the sort of the fat, and be prepared to jump into the next evolution as we see it coming. So it's a really healthy place for an industry to be in right now.
Speaking of all these changes and cycles, you talked about roles in distribution. I'm curious to get your take on what is changing in recorded music today and how that relates to distribution.
Thank you for making that distinction. The idea of recorded music versus the music industry, and I think we're creating that distinction is becoming much more acute right now. Recorded music, record companies, the business as we know it, historically has been a business that's about building catalog, building assets, building IP. Now we're seeing a big shift because artists don't want to give away their IP. They don't want to, sign perpetual deals, the 10-album deal for life, your home for life. Instead, they're doing more short-term deals, right? They're doing distribution deals, they're doing licensing deals, and in some cases, they're not doing deals at all, preferring to go direct to a platform where their IP isn't impinged at all. So the music business is really, really diversifying away from the business model that we know as the record business. That business model depends on building up a catalog and leveraging your catalog against the market. So if you look at how the record labels are now a B2B business, right? I have my catalog, I take it to Spotify, Spotify pays me against the percent of the market that my catalog represents. So what happens? What happens when you're no longer building a catalog over time because the artist won't give up their IP? What happens when new artists won't sign over their IP perpetually? What happens when artists that have been signed to perpetual label deals say, you know what, I'm only going to sign with you again if I get my old rights back? So the trend in this, from a business model standpoint, becomes more of we're a distribution services business, we're not an IP ownership business. And that is going to be a real seismic shift in the business, and that's why you're seeing a lot of conversation around new business models, because that's the business moving under our feet.
Super interesting. And I would love to get your take on, so February 1st, Universal Music Group, followed by Universal Music Publishing Group, pulled their library from TikTok. Very curious to get your read on how that's playing out, what the ripple effects are like. Obviously, you sit on the board of Warner Music that has taken a different tack. Love to hear it all.
No, we did our TikTok deal.
I know.
Wow. Well, this is classic sort of brinksmanship. Glad to be able to stand on the sidelines because folks are sweating right now on both sides. The outcome of this will definitely set a precedent for the industry. You've got two players who are in the right and also in the wrong, right? You have the biggest record company and publisher in the world that controls a lot of music, over 30+% of the music that's out there, saying we are not going to, hey, you TikTok, let's see what happens when we take our music off your platform. Let's see what happens to your revenue. And according to TikTok, nothing has happened. According to TikTok, you haven't impacted us at all. Now, if that is true, it does not bode well for any of us, right? In the traditional record business, because if that's true, the only thing that's kept us going all this time is, unlike the film and TV industry where you can have exclusive content, all of these platforms, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, depend on having all music, right? You don't want to go there and be like, oh, I can get the Beatles here, but over here, I have to go over here to get something else. So if in fact they can hold the line, I fear what it says about the value of music and the necessity of having the entire universe of popular music, that changes tomorrow. So TikTok calling the bluff is dramatic. It can be very dramatic. And on the flip side, you know, while the record and publishers say that they're protecting the rights of the artists, I can't help but think the only one suffering here right now is really the artists, right? TikTok has become a major platform for promoting all new music. So it's not the established artists we hold a bake sale for tomorrow, it's all the new artists who are trying to get their music out there, who are trying to, you know, story tell, who make a few bucks on people putting music, cheaper music behind their content. And you know, I think that's really the risk. The risk is if people can live without music, if these platforms can live without music, what does that mean for the artists?
Thank you.
I would only add to that, and this is just a note, because holding back from TikTok has driven an uptick in other platforms like Spotify. Universal is also a big investor in Spotify. So there are a lot of ways that the you know, the big boys here can withstand this in a way that the artists may not be able to.
Right, and it feels like a lot of the wrap around this and the presentation as we're doing this for artists' rights. What do you think is ahead for artists now? Is this a moment of great opportunity and democratization? Is there, what are the risks?
You mean artists' rights in their own IP or artist business model?
Artist business model.
You know, if nothing else, I think probably this whole TikTok thing can backfire because I don't know that the artists are completely aligned with what's happening. I think what they see, you know, they're not only taking away the music of the artists they represent, they're taking away music artists and writers they don't represent because they might control 30% or 40%. So this is an example of artists and writers not being in control of their destiny. And here's a corporation making decisions on their behalf. And even if they win and get a bigger deal, I don't know how much of that is actually going to trickle down to the songwriters and artists themselves. So I think you have a response here where the trend is going is artists really taking control. A lot of the bigger companies are disintermediated. You have the biggest artists in the world having achieved enormous success without using the usual platforms. Taylor Swift, Bad Bunny. They both have distribution deals. They're not signed to record labels. They do most of their promotion themselves. Their teams are largely in-house. They're not using all of the accessories that historically have been required or deemed required to be hugely successful. They're the case studies of like, wait, they can do it on their own. Why can't I do it on my own? Why do I need to give this up? So I think that from an industry, from the incumbent side, I think we have to think about how value is being created for these artists, because there's a lot more that they can do today themselves than they could in the past.
I'd love to hear your point of view on global music industry and whether that's in a growth mode. I'm feeling you're about to say, hell yeah.
Well, I mean, yes, but it's absolutely in growth mode, but I would argue that it's been in growth mode for as long as music's been around. I mean, talent is distributed fairly evenly across the world. Opportunity is not. So I think you're seeing these emerging markets all of a sudden through technology having an ability to demonstrate their penetration. I mean, we come from an Anglo-American world in the music industry where we assume we export music to the rest of the world. And now you're seeing local markets on fire, and now you're seeing also the ability of local markets to distribute to the Anglo markets, which had never happened before. Latin music, we have music coming out of Africa, music coming out of the Middle East, and those business models are different business models than the ones we have. So those are business models that are built for where we're going, as well as music that we are seeing is traveling. much more than before. Thank you, technology. It's interesting, we think of the UK, I'm going to pick on the UK and not the US, but the UK has exported so much music, from the Beatles to Oasis, right? We think of that as a core, territory for music and music generation and repertoire. Music used to be able to sell 1 million records, no problem, not long ago in the UK, and now the UK is basically Belgium. No offense to Belgium, but it's a small market in terms of being able to create repertoire that you can then ship around the world. And you're starting to see the redistribution, and it's profound and it's exciting. It's really exciting.
Music is one of the spaces that has generated so much early and ongoing noise around AI. Whether it's Drake being mimicked, it's obviously a space where it could be easy to create. How do you think AI is transforming and going to transform the music industry?
Wow, well, it's interesting watching that last presentation. I think our instinct, again, the nostalgics, the instinct is just to say, to act from a defensive position, right? Yes, there's definitely got to be rights, and we need to understand it, and we need to put guardrails around it. But I don't know how we limit innovation. I don't know how we don't look at it as an enormous opportunity for productivity, for efficiency, even for creativity, in that it will allow artists to be creative in new and different ways. I mean, I don't know how many of you know what the songwriting process is, but it generally starts with a lot of different people over a very long period of time and a lot of work getting thrown out, and a very small group of people who are able to decide what goes and what doesn't. So we actually don't end up seeing a lot of the work that's created and benefiting from it. If I'm Taylor Swift, for example, I would love to, rather than taking 2 years out to write my next record, I'd love to starting with a blank sheet of paper, hey, give me 100 songs in the style of Taylor Swift about, list these 10 things, and all of a sudden she's starting from there. I think there are a lot of ways that you can, use this technology for good and not evil, and make us more productive, hopefully even, more creatively inclined. So I think we're wrapping our arms around it, but I think see it as a detriment, and it is to our detriment if we see this as perilous. We would still be riding horses and carriages if we saw innovation always as a threat. We understand that it's going to render some skills obsolete. We've got to either upskill and adapt, or there is going to be an element of obsolescence, and people will lose jobs, or people will have to pivot, but that is what we do.
Thank you. Let's move to another component of the business, live music. So 2023 was a record-breakingly successful year for live events. Taylor Swift and Beyonce capturing a lot of that, but really so many artists. I mean, an incredibly diverse list of artists driving record-breaking success. Talk to us about the temperature, opportunity, evolution in live music.
Well, I think you're responding to a few things, right? Live music we came out of COVID where there was zero, where there was a standstill. We were at a dead stop. So both from an artist's perspective, you had a lot of backlog of tours, and two, from a consumer's perspective, like we were desperate, we were thirsty for live experiences, for the ability to be around other people, be close to other people, singing in front of other people with a mask off. So that experience, and I think we've seen it beyond music with all sorts of experiences, travel, and how we've been able to sort of come back with a vengeance, saying, we were talking about humanity in the last one. With our humanity, like, we love community. We love being a part of something. We love experiencing something, and with other people. And I think, again, you talk about where sort of things are going. Artists are, where in the past, we thought of artists as being in the business of making and distributing and selling their music. That was their business. And now, again, not to overuse Tay-Tay, but Taylor's in the business, a very different business. She's in the business of building her community and then monetizing that community. And the way she builds her community is through the songs and through this relationship that is developed through the lyrics and through the songs. And that, you ask yourself the question, is she in the music business, or is the music the means to the end, right? Is the music the tool to build that community, and the community is what she, can leverage to build her empire? And I think it makes a lot of people in the industry uncomfortable. Listen, you saw at the Grammys, it makes her peer group uncomfortable because she maybe isn't the most revered artist among her peers, but boy, as a business person, do they wish they had a little bit of what she's got going on. And that is another case study for, what is the business you're in? Are you in the record business, or are you in I'm building my brand business? And that takes on a different shape. A lot of artists like Taylor, like Beyonce, if you look at their revenue pie, where it used to be heavily weighted to records and publishing, it is now very well distributed around very different things, including live, but including other interests, business development, merchandise, and putting forward your own, other ancillary content through the different social media platforms. It's exciting. Again, it's an evolution.
So incredibly interesting. Last question before I'll turn it over to the audience for questions. But you are truly a trailblazer. And I won't go through the list of everything, but it doesn't take a lot of Googling of your name to come up with the word again and again first. And you recently, in response to a question in an interview, said that being the first presumes that there will be others to follow, which has not often been the case. What are some of the things that you try to do to ensure opportunity for others, and what can the music industry do to try and help contribute to that?
Wow, now in retrospect, that sounds really cynical that I said that. But I guess it's true, and I think the most obvious, I'm going to call upon my oracle, Michelle Obama, with a quote that always rings in my head, which is, you need 3 friends. I don't know if you know this quote. You need 3 friends in your life. The one that walks in front of you, that leads you, that guides you, that follows you, and helps you. You need the one beside you, who is just next to you throughout your journey and is always there to support you. And you need the one who's following right behind you. And as you clear the way, you're bringing them on with you. And I think if we're all doing that support system, I think we end up in a very good place. Specifically in the music industry, listen, it is an industry that's very unusual in that the stakeholders along the food chain are incredibly diverse, from the artists to the consumers on down the line. And I think it is an industry that should be at the forefront of having representation all the way across the board, because we do have the benefit of enormous diversity in terms of those with leverage in the business. Women, people of color, etc. So if we can make the industry more representative, we will be a great model to follow.
All right, well, I think we have microphones to pass. Thank you.
Hi, David Blunt.
It's on.
Is it on now? I have a big voice, but not that big.
It's on.
We can hear you.
All right, there we go. It's David Blunt Forbes. Just curious, in all of this, as we look at business models going forward, doing things differently, thinking about things differently, there's a sort of a core challenge, which is copyright in the age of AI, and what that means for music and other forms. As you diversify, you still have to own the stuff. We have a lot of complex stuff about what an AI-generated thing is and where it impairs the copyright, A. But B, it floods the market. Spotify supposedly is uploading thousands of songs a day, millions of songs, well, certainly a week,
Well,
that
that's
are
where it's going.
flooding the market and, shrinking the pie for the human creators. So how do you survive in that reality?
How do you survive, meaning the artists?
Yes.
Listen, I think copyright legislation is going to evolve quickly in the face of this, and has to. I don't know if you remember the piracy, CDs, piracy, there was piracy, DVD piracy, film and television. Copyright legislation reacted to it. I think piracy is not a topic today like it was 10, 15 years ago. In my opinion, I think we react too slowly. This could have been addressed before it was in front of us, knowing that this is where technology is going. AI is being talked about since ChatGPT, but it's been around for a really long time, and we know it's coming, and we've seen its evolution and could have projected how this would impact all the various industries. If we didn't move to protect ourselves earlier on, then we will have to react, and you're going to put the genie back in the bottle to some extent. So will it be perfect? No, but I think the legislation will be there soon enough so that it's semi-protected. And I think the problem is technology is moving faster than our regulators are moving, and I think we have to be prepared. There'll be a little pain. And to your point about what's currently happening, there are literally hundreds of thousands of songs that are uploaded now. These aren't necessarily AI-generated songs now. They've already, what we consider, flooded the market relative to what we're used to. And this is, by the way, not Spotify, this is creators. What we have through these platforms is the total democratization of the ability to distribute your music wherever you live, however good you are, or however good you think you are. And one of the biggest evolutions in the industry, and I'm sure this is the same in film and TV, is we used to be the gatekeepers. We used to be the record labels, the radio, the retailer, all of these gatekeepers who would tell the public what good looked like. By the time you had choice, it had already been curated to the point of, you can pick between these two things. And what's happening now, and we're really responding to this already, is the consumer determines what good looks like. It may not be what we think good looks like, it may not be what we think artistic looks like, but the consumer is going to tell you what wins. And a lot of the stuff we might look around and say, oh, that's not music, that's that 20-second riff, that's not music the way I know it, but it is, because that's what the consumer demands now. Whether we think it's good or we think it's up to par, we think it compares to what we knew. It is just sort of the way it's going, and I think we're going to see that as well. If music is put out that is created artificially, the consumers start to enjoy and favor, then that is an evolution we need to be prepared for.
Hey, my name is Hannah Antriner. I'm a second-year full-time MBA candidate at UCLA Anderson, and I'm our VP of Music, so thank you so much for coming. I loved your conversation that you both had, and I think what you said about the TikTok UMG situation, I'll call it, is very apt, and especially thinking about the artists. I'm curious, you also talked a lot about the inflection point that music's at and sort of this changing business model around music that will have to be sorted out. When you're looking at artists, labels, publishers, just all the players across the industry, are there any particular people you think are going to be helping us lead the charge through this inflection point, people who you think are really at the cutting edge of innovation and thinking about the business and thinking about how do we kind of navigate this, and just for all of us, people to look to for wisdom kind of moving forward?
I don't know if I can put my finger on any one other than it will inevitably come from the artist side. And I think that's the biggest shift that we're talking about. The power base that has historically been around these big organizations is now really shifting to be driven, A, by the consumers, right? Which was never a driving factor before. They reacted and responded to what we gave them. And B, by the artists. And when I say the artists, I mean the artist teams. So historically, now artist teams are becoming much more well-developed. They're able to make records, do deals, create marketing plans, et cetera. We're building a whole new muscle around artist teams where the expectations and the execution of those teams has to be really top-notch to cut through. But that's where I would look to the artists. And I think you already, Bad Bunny was another reference. Bad Bunny has a distribution deal. Everything he does is on his own. Doesn't have a major label. Well, again, one of the biggest tours last year. Doesn't sing in English and yet has taken the Anglo market by storm. Like, none of this was anticipated from the industry side. And I think you watch all these case studies of these artists that just know their audience so well, and they go right to the source and build their audience. I think you watch those, they will pave the way for what this industry looks like. We as businesses will respond in kind to what they're doing.
All right, well, thank you all so much. Thank you, Cece.
Up next is a discussion about the power of brand partnerships and entertainment. Please welcome today's moderator, CEO of Versus Systems, Matthew Pierce, and the panelists.